Yeah. So where I'm at here is just really the home screen of where you land when you want to make when you're in Power Virtual Agent, and you've got a bar here, much like most of the other things in the Power platform. And topics is the main real area here that's of interest. Topics is where you can kind of build your bot, which is like maybe your conversation piece. I've already built one here that's a suggestion box where if someone has a suggestion, they can enter it and it gets saved somewhere. But that will live, that conversation lives in the chat bot along with what I'm going to build today as well. So you could have multiple kind of queries living in the one bot, which is like, so you could have one for suggestion box, or you could maybe have one where if someone says, I need to talk to HR, it might bring you down a different path. So you can set up a load of different ones. Microsoft also already have a lot of different branches in here, like stuff for greeting. So if someone says hi, it kind of naturally gives them a hello, something nice back, rather than just jumping straight into what you're going to program. Before I start, what I'm going to build today is, and what I thought would be worthwhile, well, is to show, I wanted to integrate it with Flow, Power Automate, and SharePoint. So I'm just going to build a simple bot that it's something that comes up in our office a lot, where Sean is looking for what we want in our groceries for the week, and we all email him back. So I was going to build a bot where we could enter in our groceries into the bot. It gets saved in a SharePoint list, and from there it actually sends us back like an ID number, so that we can then later on, let's say in the week, on Wednesday, I can go back to the bot, enter in my ID number, and check, has Sean checked this? What's the status of my request? So having it in terms of a grocery shopping list is kind of trivial, but you could also apply this to very same logic for suggestion box, or let's say kind of a HR thing. Any problems you're having, you could have the very same thing, and your employee could log a problem, go back in, see the status of it, has it been resolved, and that way, I don't know, it's of some use. So just to show you what I've set up in SharePoint before we start into the bot, I've just set up a list, very simple list called groceries. I've got a title under here is where I'm going to save I'm going to get my user to enter in an email. So I'm going to save their email here under title and whatever groceries they want. So I'm going to get them to enter in their groceries as part of my bot conversation as well. And I'm also going to have a section here for request status. So hopefully when they enter in their query, it comes up as, let's say, pending review. And then if Sean goes in and looks at whatever groceries I've ordered, he can update to complete, or he can update to say, no, you don't get any more crisps this week, whatever. So to start with a bot, I'll pick some like new topic here. And I'm just going to call this our groceries, our grocery list, let's say. And here's where we kind of start with, let's say, some of the more intelligent features here, where I can enter in some trigger phrases. So I might just put in the word grocery to start with. And I might put in groceries. I could put in shopping list. And basically, you could fill out a lot of these. They recommend 5 to 10 diverse phrases, which is probably, yeah, I mean, the more you enter into them, the more it's going to be kind of be able to intelligently direct you to this bot. This is what, when I enter in this, if I put in, I want to log my groceries, this is what will direct it towards this line of chat rather than the suggestion box that I also have set up. So these are very important like that. I'm just going to put in food as well for a handy little word for when we're testing. So ideally you'd put in a lot more than that, but I'm going to go with that many for now. Introductory kind of phrases to kick it off. So now we're brought, once I click there to go to the author in Canvas, I'm brought to the designer view here. You can see my list of trigger phrases, and I can get my bot to just put in an intro message like, hi, I'm Foodbot, or something like that. Not much use, it's just going to sit there. But after that, I'm going to ask him a question. I'm going to get, from here, I want to know, what does my user want to do? Do they want to order their groceries, or do they want to look up a status of their grocery order from Monday, let's say? So that's the two branches we're going to go with today. either ordering or checking the status. So first of all, I'm going to ask a question here. I'm going to say, what do you want to do? I can do multiple things here. Right now it's set to multiple choice options. I've got a whole array of different options for what way I kind of want to take in the information from the user. Right now, multiple choice makes sense to me because I only really want them to have two options. So I want to put in, let's say, order groceries as one option. And I want to put in check status of a previous order. And that gives me two branches. And it also says my response. I can kind of give my name something here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this my choice of function. Let's say just something like that. Just to give the variable that comes back to me, which of these, what did I pick? So if my choice of function is order groceries, we're going to go down this path. And if it's choice function is check status of previous order, we're going to go down this path. So very easy, create your two different paths here of where you're going to go. I'm getting an update here to say my connection is bad quality. Are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Philly.
Perfect, perfect. So let's continue on down this line here. So after, let's say, they decide to order groceries, I want a bit more information. I'm going to want my user's email. So I'm going to say, please enter your email into a question. Please enter your email. And now it doesn't make any sense for me to pick multiple choice options there. So I'm actually going to go down to the email specific entry here. So that's handy. So I'm going to call this as well, var user email. And after this, I want to add an extra branch. Now I want to know, well, what groceries do you actually want to order? So I'm just going to say enter all groceries you want. And right now I'm going to change this to just take in the user's entire response. It's going to be a big long string. They want eggs, they want bacon, they want milk. I'm going to take in the user's entire response here, and I'm going to call this var grocery order. And at that point, I'm ready to, I have everything I need there. I know who's putting in the order and I know what they want. So I'm ready to send that to my SharePoint list. And to do that, I'm going to do with Power Automate. Now, Sean mentioned in the intro that you can actually create, under your call and action, create a flow straight from PVA, from Power Virtual Agents. You can see here I've got two flows already made for that other bot that I have. One reason I don't use this from here, and one reason I don't is because anytime I've used this and I hit create a flow, I build a flow and it doesn't actually become visible here. And the reason being is that to use a flow with your Power Virtual Agent, it has to be inside a solution. And for whatever reason, whenever I build a flow using that connector, it actually builds it without having it in a solution. So I have to go back in, add it to a solution anyway. So I find it's quicker just to hop over to Power Automate. And in here, this is the solution I made earlier. I'm going to make a new flow. And this is the flow that's going to take in their email, take in their grocery order, populate SharePoint, and also send them back some information about it. So to take it in, I'm going to take in when a HTTP request is received. And I'm going to use a sample payload. So I'm just going to enter in some JSON in here just to get what the user is submitting. So the user is going to submit their email. So I'm going to say, just write in email. And that's going to come in as a text format. So I'm going to put in text. And the other thing they're going to enter is their groceries. And that's also going to come in as a text. So this way I've got, make sure I've got this all formatted right. This way I've got my flow ready to accept them to inputs that are going to come out of the Power Virtual Agent. So my next step then is I'm going to create an item based on this. So I'm going to pick my create item. And from here, I'm going to hopefully see my site address here. And this is the one I've set up already, PVA bot demo. and my list is there, groceries. And that's my list over here that we talked about earlier. And my title, the title is, here you can actually see already it's popped up where my email and my groceries is going to come in through that HTTP request. I'm going to save the email of the user in and their groceries in under groceries. And under request status, as this is the initial status that gets set, I'm going to say pending review, let's say, because it's just after arriving in there. So I'm going to save that. And I'm not sure how we're doing on time, whether we have time to send an email. Maybe we'll skip straight into sending a response back to our user. Yeah, I could maybe send an email out to my customer or to my user to say all's good, but it'll be pretty much the same information I'd send them back in a chat as well. So I'm just going to actually just send a response in the chat. So just like I took in the input with HTTP request, I'm going to send a HTTP response. Now this one, I'm going to fill out my body here as well. So under my body, I'm going to put in, let's say this is my grocery response. My grocery response. And in that, I'm going to write back, your request has been logged. I'm just going to send a message back to my user. Your request has been logged. And I'm going to say your request is, and I'm going to include a request ID. Under here, you can see already this has popped up for me in my dynamic content. I can actually get the ID of what I'm after setting in SharePoint. So what I've made up there in SharePoint, I'm going to take that ID and send it back to my user. That way they can use that to check the status of this later on in the week or whenever they want. So I'm going to hit oh, and I'm going to get an error there because I haven't actually set up my JSON here. So it doesn't really know what I'm doing. So once again, I'm going to set up my JSON, and this one, all I'm sending back is one response. So I'm going to call this the same as what I called it in here, grocery response. So I'm going to call it, just set up all that again, just to make sure nothing goes weird with it. So I'm going to set it up as a grocery response. This is going to just send me back a text back to the chatbot. So I'm going to save that. I'm still getting an error. So let's see, where did I get my error? Is it up here? Grocery response, that's under my JSON. And I think it might have actually updated there now because it looks like it's saving, and it's saved. So now, hang on, I hop back to my bot. So now to go back to my bot, where we left off was here where I said, enter all the groceries you want. Now I'm going to go down and hopefully my the flow I just made will be visible in here under call and action. And actually, I imagine I never actually named my flow, so I imagine that's it, create item. I'm not going to name it now at this point, so I'm going to stick with create item, and hopefully it will work nicely. So call my action, and create item. And you can see straight away here, this knows what does it need to take in to use that flow. So it needs to take in the email, and it needs to take in my grocery order, the two variables I said earlier. And it's also quite aware of what it's sending back, a grocery response. So all I'm going to send back to my user here is a message, and my message is going to be actually lives inside this variable, my grocery response. I don't need to do a whole lot more. We'll talk about finishing conversations. At this point, we've got a lot done down one branch, and it's probably a good idea to test our bot. And this is where this is quite nice. You can test your bot straight away. I can test what I have over here. So I'm going to type in one of my keywords that I start off with and see if that works, like food. See if that kicks off my bot over here. So I'm getting an error straight away. So maybe food isn't ideal. And I'm getting some of these things, that error messages I need to set up a little bit more correctly down other paths. But let's put in, maybe I need to save actually what I have so far. And let's see what happens now. I'm going to type in groceries. So it comes up with, hi, I'm Foodbot. The first message, what do you want to do? And pretty cool. You can see it's moving down through here, everything we've wrote. So I'm going to pick, I want to order groceries to start with. So you can see it's moving down the side, and it says, please enter your email. So I'm going to put in purine@fidelity.com. I'm going to send that back to my bot. Enter all the groceries you want. Well, I need eggs. I definitely need toilet paper because it's all sold out everywhere for the days that are in it. Hand sanitizer, of course. All the essentials here. I'm going to send that off to it, and hopefully it gets back to me. Your request has been logged and your request ID is 9. So it's logged my request, and if I hop up to my SharePoint list, here we are. It's logged my email. It's logged what groceries I want. It says it's pending review. I'm going to pretend I'm Sean here. I'm going to kind of go into this and say, no, it's all sold out. So hopefully when I check the status later on, it's going to return that to me. So now if I return to my Power Virtual Agent, I'm now going to build the other branch. I'm going to build branch 2, where we actually go check the status of our previous order. So over here, if the user picks, I want to check my status, the only thing I really need to ask them is I just need to ask, well, what is the ID number? So I'm going to say, what is the ID of your request? And once again, don't really want to take in multiple choice. I'm just going to take in the user's entire response here. And I'm going to call this var request ID, let's say. Just to name that variable somewhere. And really, that's all I need. I'm going to build a new flow now that takes in that, looks at my SharePoint and sees, well, where did this all go? So I'm going to hop back over to where my flow is. I'm going to actually save him one last time, even though I know he's working. And I'm going to go back. So now I'm going to make a new flow. And this one I'm going to make sure I name correctly before I start, just for convenience sake, rather than having it called untitled. I'm going to get it all loaded up. So this one I'm going to call, let's say, request status. And on this one, once again, we're going to do a HTTP request. And I'm just going to put in my JSON again. I'm going to use a sample payload again once more. So this is my, I'm just going to call it request ID. And it's going to be a text again. I'm going to hit done. And I'm going to put in a new step. And I'm going to get that item from my SharePoint list. I'm going to look it up. So get item from SharePoint. So I'm going to hop into my SharePoint list over here. There's my list. And here's something that's just a little bit finicky. I can't see anything here. And this is just usually the way when I look for my item. But one weird thing about this is once I type something into my expression, if I hop back to dynamic content, I can see all that stuff I want actually. I want that request ID. So I'm just going to get rid of that one that I typed in to get that. But there's my request ID. And that's going to get for me that item out of SharePoint. And I'm going to just send back the status that goes with it. Once again, I'm going to hit response. So very similar to like what we did earlier. I'm going to send a response. And this time, under body, I'm going to say, this is my status response, I'm going to call it. And I'm going to say, your request is currently, and I'm going to put it, and from down here I can actually see the stuff I want, and I think there should be a request status here. It should draw that field. There it is. Your request is currently, and I'm going to put in request status. So it's going to tell me what state my request is in. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to put in my JSON, and I'm going to put in my, let's call this, what did I call it back here actually is important, status response. So I'm going to generate from sample. And this is just going to be a text that I'm sending back to my flow or back to my PVA, my Power Virtual Agent. I'm going to save that up. Once again, I've got an error, but I think it might have been the same as the last time. I think it might just take a second to take in that. I think that was wishful thinking on my part. So let's see, something about my JSON here. Let me get rid of it here for a second and see what, because I went out of it, went back in. So status response, I'm going to copy that just to make sure I'm got everything right. I'm going to generate from sample this. Status response, I need that in here. And it's going to be a text that it's sending back. Let's save it. It looks good so far. I think something I did there, I went to generate my sample and then I went back into my flow or back into this and then went back to that. I think that throws it off a little bit in my experience. It's saving. Still saving. And it's saved. So hopefully now this is visible. I just have to make that small to jump back over here. Hopefully that's visible now to my flow because I want to call an action and I want to call that action in particular. I'm going to call, I think we named this something, request status flow. There it is. So I'm going to call that. I'm going to send into it that variable I was talking about up there. I'm going to send my request ID. And this knows it should send back a response. So all I'm going to do is send show a message. It's not a question or anything. I'm just going to show that response I have, status response. And one thing I'm going to add in here is the end conversation. You can add in an end with survey, which is quite nice, or transfer to agent. We're going to do an end with survey, just see how that happens. Hopefully we're done here now, so we're going to test it out. Hopefully there's no errors because we're running just about perfect on time, I think. So once again, I'm going to say groceries to my bot or grocery. Hopefully it knows what I'm talking about. Hey, I'm food bot. Well, I want to check the status of a previous order. So it says, what's the ID? If you remember, the ID of the request I placed earlier was 9. And that's an area where I think it's important to actually send an email as well as sending that response back, because at least if a user has an email, it stores that number. While if it's just lost, it can get lost in that chat otherwise. I'm going to send back 9. And it says your request is currently, no, it's all sold out. Did that answer your question? So it's after hopping over to my list in here, grabbing the request status, and it tells me, no, it's all sold out. And it all happens pretty remarkably fast. It's connecting to that flow, connecting to the SharePoint and firing it back without any real lag at all. And here's that little survey we added in at the end. Did that answer your question? Yes. Please rate your experience. You can rate it excellent. If you say no, there's actually all these options then within that, like under topics. So I'm going to just hop out of my topic for a second. You can see my topics here is grocery list. There's all these other like topics like confirmed failure. If that says, if I had said no, that didn't answer my question, you can go in there and you can set it up. Well, what do you want this to do when your question isn't answered? So right now they've got a whole load of stuff. They've got talk to an agent, rephrase. That's stuff I haven't really implemented there, but you could actually customize it to whatever you want as well, because not everybody has an agent, or not everybody wants everything transferred to an agent. So that's where I'm going to leave off that and